Welcome back to the Farm Show on Westplex Talk 104.5 FM. In our first segment today, on February 21st, 2026, we talked about the Bayer settlement regarding glyphosate claims, a class settlement regarding those glyphosate claims. We gave a little bit of background on it via the Brad and John show from 7 to 8 a.m. here on Westplex Talk 104.5, Monday through Friday. Now let's hear directly from the folks at Bayer. Bayer had a call on Tuesday with investors, analysts, media, and employees to talk about the class settlement. Bill Anderson began by laying out the rationale behind the settlement. Note his use of the term Monsanto instead of Bayer.
Today marks an important milestone for the company. 2 years ago, we committed to significantly containing litigation. Today, we're putting forward a major step in that direction. The Monsanto company has reached agreement with a nationwide class of plaintiffs to settle the current and potential future cases in the U.S. glyphosate litigation. Under the settlement, which awaits court approval, Monsanto will make capped annual payments that decline over time, spread out over a period of up to 21 years. Why are we doing this? I'll give you three main reasons. First, this is a choice for speed and containment over a protracted legal battle. Instead of spending decades in legal disputes, we're choosing to focus the company on its true mission. Litigation uncertainty has plagued the company for years, and this settlement gives the company a road to closure. The proposed settlement comes at a price, but we have a plan to finance it, and it's distributed over many years. And we're making good on one of the central promises we made 2 years ago. This is a move to liberate the company from the litigation burden so our people can dedicate resources to cell and gene therapies, drought-resistant seed hybrids, better ways of taking care of everyday health. I'm confident that will yield a bigger impact for health for all, hunger for none, and a better return for investors. Second, the timing was right. For 3 years, we've upped our containment efforts. Eventually, we reached a point when plaintiff lawyers were willing to come to the table. After many months of difficult negotiations, Monsanto reached a deal. And that agreement is now subject to approval from a court in Missouri, where the vast majority of cases are pending. Third, we're settling this because it complements the Supreme Court review of our case in a way that could provide the tightest possible form of containment. In fact, the two are independently necessary and mutually reinforcing. Let me elaborate. Today's agreement addresses the bulk of eligible current and future cases. It wouldn't even be possible without the Supreme Court's decision to accept our case. Beyond that, the stakes of the Supreme Court's decision are large. A decision in our favor would address cases not covered by the settlement, including significant adverse pending judgments. Plus, a favorable decision from the Supreme Court would both disincentivize and cover potential opt-outs from the settlement. What's just as critical is the question of federal preemption. And that's where the Supreme Court's ruling is absolutely essential. Their decision on this issue has massive consequences for manufacturers of crop protection products, both products on the market today and those in development, as well as for U.S. farmers who urgently need clarity on how crop protection products are regulated in the United States. Any lack of regulatory clarity on this matter could jeopardize the availability of these vital products, with potentially severe consequences for American farmers and the American food system. It's time for the courts, as well as lawmakers at the federal and state levels, to act. Take this example. We're preparing to launch the first new herbicide in a generation, Icafolin. And we're likely going to launch it in Brazil before we launch it in the U.S. American farmers and consumers deserve better. The issue is urgent. It's bigger than glyphosate. It demands clarity on future innovation that this settlement will not provide, but the U.S. Supreme Court can. That's why we've taken a multi-pronged approach, and we will continue our diverse containment efforts beyond today's announcement. Now, this isn't the first attempt at a class settlement. We need to acknowledge that, and we've learned from that experience in designing this agreement. My colleague Bill Dodero will go through that with you. Separate from the class, the company has reached agreements to settle certain cases in PCB litigation, as well as additional glyphosate cases on confidential terms. In total, these resolutions, including litigation costs, will lead to an increase of the provision and liabilities. I'll hand it over to Wolfgang to break that down for you and give you some further detail on the financials.
Well, Bill handed it over to Wolfgang, but we're not going to hand it over to Wolfgang. Because Wolfgang, don't call me Puck, Nickel, just talked about a whole bunch of numbers that are really beyond the scope of what we care about. We'll go back to Bill for more of an explanation of why the settlement is necessary and who the real bad guys in this whole thing are.
In terms of the next steps, the class settlement will now move through the approval process. In parallel, we'll present our case to the Supreme Court with a hearing scheduled for April 27th. Further, the company will continue to advocate for and defend regulation that is science-based and provides clarity for American farmers. Today's announcement is not our sole path to containment, but a major step in our multi-pronged strategy. We'll closely follow the next steps. We will remain prepared for all possible outcomes, and everything remains on the table. Before handing it over, I'll close with an important point. To be clear, today's announcement does not take away from the truth, a truth that scientists and regulators around the planet continue to uphold, that glyphosate is a safe and essential tool for farmers in the U.S. and around the world. This settlement comes at a cost, even beyond its direct monetary price. It's cost employees their jobs. It's diverted funding away from new medicines and new seeds and towards litigation, an industry that costs the average U.S. household more than $4,000 every year. So while this settlement is necessary for the company today, we maintain our significant objections to the broken tort system that makes it necessary.
Yeah, you tell him, Bill. It's good to see Bill take it out on lawyers. Nobody likes lawyers. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Bayer CEO Bill Anderson explain why the company is agreeing to a $7.25 billion with a B billion-dollar class settlement. Bill turned it over to Bill Dodero, who leads up the glyphosate litigation for Bayer, to explain a bit more. When you read mainstream media pieces about glyphosate, most of them focus on something called the Durnell case, and Bill Dodero explains what that case is all about, and much more.
I will provide you with more details on the class settlement, but first I want to expand on a few key points that Bill made. The goal in reaching this class settlement and pursuing our Supreme Court case is to reach the greatest possible closure for the Roundup litigation. By that, we mean addressing all of the present and potential claims of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, or NHL, allegedly due to Roundup exposure, and either foreclosing them or resolving them as quickly as possible. That is the best and surest path to enable Bayer to get back to its mission. To do this, both the class settlement and Supreme Court case are necessary, and they mutually reinforce one another. Let me explain how. First, the Supreme Court case entitled Durnell is critical to resolving substantial outstanding damage awards with pending appeals, which are not covered by the class settlement. It would also cover opt-outs from the settlement, that is, claimants who are eligible to participate in the class but choose not to. Overall, it would foreclose present and future claims grounded on state label-based warning theories, which is the central allegation in all of the Roundup cases to date. And, as Bill mentioned, it would provide much-needed definitive guidance from the United States Supreme Court, which recently agreed to decide whether the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, or FIFRA, preempts a label-based failure to warn claim where EPA has not required the warning. Clarity here is critical to support innovation and for us to continue to provide vital tools to U.S. farmers and food security to Americans. Significantly, the potential impact of Durnell is not limited to glyphosate, Roundup, NHL claims, or even the agricultural industry. The outcome can have broader impact because other federal statutes that govern medical devices, poultry products, meat, and motor vehicles, among others, contain the same or very similar federal preemption language. And courts deciding cases often give weight to how statutory language has been interpreted, even if it is contained in different laws. The class settlement, in turn, is designed to resolve Roundup claims alleging NHL injuries regardless of the legal theory on which they are based. It provides a resolution for any litigation remaining after the Supreme Court's decision, regardless of claim, preventing further delay to closure. The settlement also enables us to bring containment to this litigation through a structured process with defined payments.
Okay, we're going to cut Mr. Dodero off right there because he started going in painful detail, painful to bear, and probably to the listener, to be honest, about exactly what the settlement structure and claims and financials and everything like that would look like. I think that's beyond the scope of what most of us care about. A gentleman from BMP in the Q&A portion of the call asked Bill Anderson in so many words about where each of the businesses will end up. You know, there's been a lot of talk over the years about Bayer possibly spinning off its agriculture unit, get it away from consumer health and pharma. A lot of talk about investors really wanting to just dump the agriculture piece and have Bayer itself only focus on consumer health and pharma. Here's what Bill had to say.
Well, you can imagine we've been very busy on other matters and haven't spent a lot of time on that question in recent weeks. But I would say maybe two things about that. First off, I think I've been very clear right along that we are committed to having the best home for each of these three businesses. Each of these businesses is delivering really important things for their customers, and that's a top priority. We consider ourselves a mission-first organization, and part of that mission has to be, hey, we're the best consumer health company in the world for our customers. We're the best pharma company in the world for those patients, and we're the best consumer health, the best crop science company for farmers. And so that's a pretty high bar. And so for me, we have to be able to demonstrate that to both our customers and investors that Bayer is the best home for these businesses. And that's why we've implemented this radical transformation. We've taken out basically 2/3 of management and radically delayered. We're moving faster than ever. I think if you talk to people at Bayer today, they would say this is a new Bayer, and we're moving fast to deliver on that mission. And so that's how we'll decide about structure, is basically, hey, is the current structure the best way to deliver, or is there a better way? And second, I'll just say, and we will do a thorough assessment of that in due time, but at the moment, we're staying very focused on our 5 key priorities, which includes the litigation, resolution, getting our debt down, which we've got more work to do on that. It includes rebuilding our pharma pipeline. It includes improvements in our profitability and crop science. And it includes us making Bayer the leanest, fastest life science company in the world. So we're really focused on that, Lauren. But I can assure you, we will be addressing the structure question in the future.
Okay, so that's a pretty solid stiff arm from Bill, reminding us that he's too busy to think about a spinoff now, and essentially saying, let's handle what's on the table in front of us before we start talking about a spinoff or dumping off a whole bunch of assets, at least not on this phone call. There were a whole bunch more questions from media and analysts about the financial specifics of the settlement, and especially about the opt-out feature that was mentioned earlier. But we'll just play one more clip. It's from a reporter from Bloomberg asking a question about future cases that haven't even been filed yet, future cases being resolved.
So the short answer is that we would expect the vast majority of futures, as well as current cases, would fall inside the class. It was designed that way, that it would be something that would be chosen and would make sense to them. So we would anticipate that. What was the second question?
How much you will be offering?
How much? Yeah, we're not disclosing that information today, but this will all be made known in the days ahead.
All right, we're going to wrap up the Bayer audio there. I think it's probably important to go back and summarize exactly how Bayer is positioning this publicly. On their website and in their media materials, they state Monsanto. Monsanto announces Roundup class settlement agreement to resolve current and future claims. And these are the main bullets that Bayer lays out. Class settlement and the U.S. Supreme Court case are independently necessary and mutually reinforcing elements in multi-pronged strategy to significantly contain the litigation. The second bullet. Funding of the class totals up to $7.25 billion US dollars. Monsanto will make declining capped annual payments for up to 21 years, giving it greater financial certainty. Third bullet, class agreement requires court approval. Bullet number 4, Monsanto has reached separate agreements to settle certain other cases in Roundup and PCB litigation. And the final bullet, Bayer to increase overall litigation provisions and liabilities from 7.8 billion euros to 11.8 billion euros. You can find all of this information and the full video by going to Bayer.com. Ooh, that was a lot of heavy talk about glyphosate. You know what replaced glyphosate in the Monsanto/Bayer system? Dicamba. We talked a little bit about Dicamba last week. And in C Block, coming up next, we're going to hear from my favorite agronomist show, Ask the Agronomist. It's put on by the folks from Bayer. We're such homers today. You're going to hear about the Dicamba tolerant system. Last week, we heard about it from a gentleman from Illinois who's a bit of an expert on Illinois soybeans. This year, we're going to hear about it directly from a Bayer employee. Not any Bayer employee, Bayer agronomist Lance Tarchioni. When we come back, all about the Dicamba system, including, hey, whatever happened to Extendamax? Is Extendamax still an option? You're listening to The Farm Show on Westplex Talk 104.5 FM.